So dudes, good morning. Today we're back on the 92 F1 build. If you remember last video, we started working on some stuff for the motor oil cooler. And so I'm going to pass it off to Christian and he's going to explain what we're doing today.
All right, so this is the oil engine cooler that we got. It's a CBR cooler that has 6 points to mount it from. It's got one inlet and then one outlet on it as well on each side. So what we're thinking is this is going to sit somewhere just like this in front of the radiator. And to mount it, what we're thinking of is we've been waiting on these trick little tabs that have the nut certs already in them. So we got those on the cooler right now. We have a tube in here that we tacked in place. And then what we're gonna do is just run a tube across the top of the cooler and then a tube across the bottom of the cooler. And then these 2 bolts right here are what hold the air filter on right now. So what we're thinking is we're gonna utilize these 2 bolts and run a plate here that's gonna tie in the top part of the cooler. And then it'll all be tied in at the top, and then the bottom will just have the one side holding it on.
So right now I'm just getting everything mocked up to cut. I'm going to mark it with just a Sharpie in a second, but we're just using some 1-inch 120 wall, and that's what we're going to use to mount the oil cooler.
Really killing it today, dude.
Mondays. You guys are going to hate me because I didn't show any of this, but we got the piece all done. What we ended up doing was just doing 90s right here, how we had planned, and then just tabbed off of that. So the way we did it is we just had the tabs bolted into the cooler right here. We made this first piece, well we actually started up here, we made this first piece and then measured for this and got this all cut out. It's just 245s and then it's notched around this tube. And then on here we just did the same thing and then took it all apart, welded it together. And the way this kind of slides in is from the bottom. Where the skid plate is, it just kind of comes through, slides up, and then we bolt it up top here, and then bolt it down here. And we've kind of used just factory spots where there was bolts just to make things a little bit easier. And we bolted in this guy right here, the air filter bolt on as well. Everything up here has really been bolt on because we want to have the ability to take it off if we need to for some reason, and paint it, do whatever we need to do. Right now we're getting ready to put the cooler in. We're going to show you kind of what we meant by sliding up through. So we just use these normal bolts that come factory in the core support, and that's what installs it. So Christian's going to slide it up, and then I'm just going to get everything bolted together. Jump on that. As you can see, it's pretty easy to get it in there. It's just going to be kind of troublesome once the truck's together because we'll have a skid plate blocking that right there. So if we want to pull this out in the future, we'll just have to pull the skid plate and then slide it out. But as you can see, it's all pretty simple. We were going to do that tube coming back to the core support right here, but it doesn't need it. This thing's in there super solid. And so for the lines, they're just going to run down right here. We're going to have a 90-degree fitting, and it's going to come down and then wrap back around the cooler. And then we have the other one poking out right here, and then they're both just going to shoot back and run through to the motor right here. So everything's going to be super simple. It's not blocking a lot of airflow for the radiator. We're going to have, or we do have, both fans right here too, which is going to be sucking air through. So there's not going to be any airflow issues. Guess what came in the mail today?
These nuts. Got him!
So we just got the alternator. It's a 250 amp alternator. They include a smaller pulley as well if you need one to get a little bit more juice. But it mounts off these 2 bolts right here, which are going to come onto the motor. Kristen's over here hiding. They're going to mount on the motor right here. And yeah, we're just trying to get everything wrapped up on the motor. We have plugs, plug wires, and plug sleeves coming as well. So yeah, we're just trying to get everything finished so we don't have to deal with the motor anymore. So we got the alternator all in. I threw a belt in here as well just to see if it'd fit, but it's way too big. So we're gonna have to measure and get a belt for this at some point. We'll probably do that in the near future once we start getting everything else wrapped up. But that's probably gonna be it for today. This piece took a lot longer than, well, not a lot longer than we thought it would. We knew it was going to take a while. That took up a majority of the day. So we'll probably hit it again in the morning and we'll see you then. All right, so it's a new morning. I kept tinkering with the belt last night and I actually got it to fit, which makes me think this one was off of our old buggy, which had an Ellis one in it as well. But the reason it fit is because I didn't wrap it around the power steering pulley down here. It kind of just went around it, which is supposed to wrap around it a little bit more. So everything's in there now and that one fits. We'll probably end up buying a new one just cause, but it'll of course be the same length. But that's all fit, which I'm really still surprised that fit. But we're also ordering some stuff right now. I just went to IMS this morning and here's what I ended up getting. It's just some 1-inch 95 volt, and that's gonna be for inside the truck because today we are working on mounting this guy right here. And so we're gonna get the shifter mounted. We're gonna mount it up in the dash right here. So we're gonna have to cut some stuff out, slide it in, figure out how to mount it. And so that tubing over there is for mounting that and doing a center console. And then so I went to IMS and got that this morning. Christian's been trying to figure out how to measure axles so we can get those ordered and those can go into the truck because those take about 6 weeks to get here. So we're just trying to get that in time for the truck to be done by New Year's. And then we're also ordering all the paneling for the back half of the truck. So we're ordering stuff for the skid plate and for all the sides to get done. So that's what we've kind of been working on this morning. As soon as Christian gets some of that more stuff ordered, we're gonna get working on that shifter. We mocked the shifter up in the dash and we figured out where we wanted it to go.
It's a new day, by the way.
Yeah, no, I already updated him on that. But so this is what we're gonna have to cut out for the shifter. It's slightly bigger than the outlet on the shifter because this is gonna end up being wrapped and it's gonna fill that little gap in there. So we got this mark, we're gonna have to cut this out and we're gonna have to cut this bottom part out as well because that's where the bottom of the shifter goes, as you can see on here. So this is gonna stub through right there and then that'll be a hole big enough to just slide this in. And it's not gonna get mounted on the dash.
Do you have a cap?
It's gonna get mounted on the center console, which is gonna be tubes under this, because if we just mount it in the dash, this is just fiberglass, so it'd be pretty flimsy. So it's gonna be hard mounted, and then it's just gonna sit in here. Alright, so the shifter is roughly in here, but we're having an issue now where it's not sitting flat, and that's because there's some bolts on here. Just pull this out. There's these two bolts at the top, which sit below a little bit, so we're just gonna have to notch it out just a little bit so this can sit completely flat in there. Christian used a stone disc just to kind of notch these things out a little bit, and then he cleaned it up with some files. And as you can see, it sits a lot better than before. It's way more flush with the dash. Alright, so we got the shifter and the dash back in the truck. We're not making the tabs for it right now because we're doing stuff for the handbrake. And so Christian's just going to hold it up. It's going to be angled towards the driver, so it's just a little bit easier to pull. And we got this painter's tape on here just to make it a little bit easier to draw on here rather than using like a paint pen so it doesn't get on the dash. But so we're just holding this up and we're going to draw a slit to cut out so we know where the handbrake goes. While the dash was out, I kind of just wanted to show you the whole structure behind it. It's basically just a bunch of handmade tabs attached by tube coming off this main dash bar. And that's what holds the dash in place and what the dash bolts to. And then these two over here were just for the steering column. They're just a little bit thicker tube so it can hold a little bit more weight. And then the wiring down here is all going to get torn out. This is just stock wiring and the whole truck's going to have fresh wiring once it's done. The dash itself is actually super easy to get in because it's fiberglass, so it's super light. You just line it up. So this side's in, that side's in, and then you can see the holes on here. So we have one here, one under here, one over here, and then a bunch up top. And they just use these guys. We have like fender washers for these, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be a clean. It won't just be a bolt going through the side. And so it literally goes in like that. And now we gotta just see how the hoon handle fits. All right, we're nearing the end of day 2 on this video. It's been a few hours since the last update. It's been pretty frustrating getting this in. This stuff was easy, getting this all done on the dash. But when it comes to making the tubes, the truck's not level right now, and so getting everything level to the eye. You have to do it by the eye. You can't just make stuff level because it might not be level with how the truck's sitting. So getting this all fitted and square has been super complicated, and it's still not perfect. And we've had a couple different designs, like we originally went here, dropped it down and went forward, and then we decided just to go straight through, and we'll figure this out later. But so this tube sticks through and we can do whatever we want with it. But getting these aligned and perfectly at the same height off this tube and like in the dash the same way has just been complicated. It's not just like getting two 90-degree tubes and just sitting them there and welding them in. It's been quite a process, and this is honestly, these two tubes are all we have to show for the last few hours, which is really frustrating because us and probably you like to see a little bit more progress. But this is going to be it for today. Tomorrow we're going to try and get this all figured out. It is currently day 3. We've been tinkering with the dash a little bit. We got a tube made right here, and this guy's going to go back behind the dash, but it's going to mount off this tube just like that, but it'll be behind here a little bit. And off that we're going to run 2 tubes coming up. This one's going to have a bend in it, or it's going to have to go back and then have a bend in it and come up. And then this side we're going to have to link this piece into the mount back here and then shoot off that with the tube coming up, and that'll be for this side. And we have 2 tabs on there. I couldn't really get an angle on it, so I can't show you, but they come off the shifter like this and then bevel out, and then the tube will be mounted right under the tab. So we're working on that right now. We are going to tack this in and then get this piece made with a bend in it, and then we'll get started on this side. All right, a quick little update while we're working on this. We got this tube in that we were talking about doing, and then we also got the one going vertical in there. And so that's tacked in, it's not completely welded. On this side, we're kind of working on getting this upright tube in. And for that, on the back side here, we need to make a piece that's going to wrap around to the back side of this tab. And that's what this guy is right here. And if you're wondering how we're making all these tubes, so to notch the tubes, we're using this JD tube notcher with just a 1-inch hole saw on it. And that's to notch the tubes when we can. A lot of times we can't fit the tube in here if it's already got a bend, so we'll have to do it with just an angle grinder. All right, to bend all the tubes, this is what we're using. It's just a JD squared Model 32 bender, and we have a hydraulic assist on it, and we're just using the 1-inch die, obviously. So this is what we're using to just bend all the tubes and get them fitted. To cut everything, we're just using a normal chop saw, and we have it at an angle. This is just a remnant from a last piece we cut. But this is what we're using to basically cut it, and like I was saying, this is what we're using to notch it. We'll either use a sand disc or we'll use a stone one like this and hand notch it. To clean everything up after kind of chopping them up, I've just been using this high grit sandpaper, and that'll kind of get it to a shiny touch, which will be clean for welding. And then to kind of deburr the inside right here, what I've been using is this chisel and just kind of digging it out. I still have to clean it up right here a little bit, as you can see. That'll just deburr it and make it all good. On the edge as well, you can see it's not completely sharp, it's kind of beveled. And I do that with either the chop saw, I'll just run it along the edge and kind of turn it, or I'll do it with just the angle grinder and go around the edge and clean it up. That'll make it so it's not super sharp, and it'll also help when you're welding because you'll have a little gap to go into. But that's how we've kind of been fitting all the tubes on the truck, and that's why it kind of takes so long. But it's nice to have tools that help you out so it doesn't take even longer. But it's a time-consuming process, and under the dash, everything's super tight. As you can see, it's super tight in here. Christian's completely under the dash, and it makes it harder to kind of fit the tubes and tack them up, but it also makes it hard to film. That's why I haven't been putting a lot of clips in of us working on this. Yeah, right now we're gonna weld this piece in, and then we'll get started on the upright, so the shifter's all hard mounted. So everything's tacked in that's gonna mount the shifter. It goes through the gears and everything. It flexes a little bit, but that's because everything's still tack welded. Once it's all finally welded, that thing's gonna be rock solid on the dash. But right now we're gonna have to make the mount for this dude. And to do that, we're gonna make a square piece of tubing off of this. We already have a tab or a plate that we cut out for the bottom of this. We're just gonna have to drill the holes in it. And then we'll have that 1-inch square tubing coming across, and then we'll figure out a way to mount it off of there so this thing's in there as well. We got a couple more tubes in. We got that square piece that we were talking about across, and then we also down here we got this built. So we had the plate for this guy right here, and we ended up taking a tube off this side and a tube off the other side, if you can see it back there, and they kind of meet up right here, and then this will get welded. This hole will get capped as well, along with this one and the ones at the top of these tubes. But everything's in there. Everything feels super good from the driver's seat. One main concern when we were mounting this handbrake was that we wanted it at an angle and not straight, and that's just for driver comfort, honestly, because before, when you're just pulling it, like if it was straight on with the truck, when you're pulling it back like that, your arm kind of feels like it's at an awkward angle. So when it's angled towards you a little bit, it's way more comfortable, and everything clears. Like this would be the bottom gear, and everything clears. It all feels super within reach. Yeah, it all feels super within reach of the driver, and it's gonna be comfortable while we're driving. So now we just gotta pull the dash off again, and then we're gonna weld everything up. That will be in the next video though. This is gonna wrap it up for the center console on this video. So the next one we'll pull it all out, we'll get it all welded up and painted, and then we'll get it back in and final welded. The way we're gonna do it is those bottom tubes, we'll just break up the tacks on those, and the tacks going to the tabs, we'll break those as well, and then the whole unit will come out, and that's how we'll be able to weld it on the bench. But right now, I'm tinkering with these guys since we just got them. We shouldn't have any problems with heat coming into the plug wires because the headers are wrapped, and then we're gonna have the plug wires wrapped as well. So that's not gonna be concerned with heat. We did get the spark plugs as well, so I'm gonna get that all in, and then that whole electronic system will be done. So here's the one that's done, and this is how they come. You can see there's this steel braid as well, which will keep out a little bit of heat, but this is what's really doing a lot of the work. So the way this goes, the white stitch, that end's bigger than this end, and this end has like a little ring in it, so it's hard. This end's like completely malleable. So this end goes on first. It's kind of like one of those Chinese thumb things where when you push it down it gets bigger. So that's how you get it around here, and then the part with the ring on it, that'll stay towards the end of the plug, and it'll just crimp itself on there a little bit. So we got all the wires sleeved, and now I'm working on gapping all the plugs. These are the NGK TR55s. So right now I'm working on getting them all gapped to 0.055, and the way we do that is just by this guy. You just gap it until it lines up with the 0.55 mark. Whenever I do spark plugs, I always check the gap, because you never know, they could be gapped differently for different vehicle, or one could just be completely off from the others. So I always double check by doing that. But I got all the plugs in. Everything went smoothly besides one, and that was this one right here on the passenger side of the truck. And it's right where the oil dipstick goes down. You can see it's kind of in the same area as the spark plug. So it was worse before, as you can see over here. It's mounted to the header bolt on the left, but it was on the one on the right, so it was even worse of the clearance. So I moved it to the one on the left to get a little bit more. So we should be able to get the spark plugs out now without having to remove a header bolt. I've been tinkering with these plug wires for a little bit, and I can't really get them to work. I think the problem is they're not long enough to fit to the coil pack and the spark plug. So I'm gonna investigate a little bit further, probably tomorrow morning, but I'm pretty tired for the day. We got a lot done in this video. We did the front motor oil cooler, that got all mounted. We got the alternator, the belt, and we did the whole center console, and we did the plugs, I guess. We can't really count the plug wires, but the center console is what took most of the time. I'm stoked on how everything's looking. We'll get it out tomorrow. That'll be the start of the next video, is getting that out and painted and everything. But that's going to be it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more content, please like and subscribe, and have a great day.